Episode 1. Thanks everyone for being here. This is my podcast. This is If I May Speak. What's going on, folks? Welcome. I've been utilizing social media my whole life, and I haven't been afraid to touch on controversial topics, hot button issues, politics, economics, science, or really anything for that matter. But here I am, putting this into a formal space now, giving me the opportunity to speak unfiltered, uncensored, and just really give you some of the thoughts that other social media platforms aren't really built for. My goal is to have conversations. You'll have opportunities to ask me questions, give me topics. We can talk about subjects that are as simple as my opinions on food places and as complex as socioeconomics and global politics. For those that don't know me, the name is JJ. I'm a husband, dad, nationally competitive drug-free powerlifter, community organizer, ice cold brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I have a graduate degree in biotech with undergrad degrees in biology and biological sciences. As far as faith, I believe that science is just man's way to try to understand the divine and not necessarily a way to replace it. Let me get some of the things out of the way in my intro, to let you know a little bit more about me, who I am, what I like, what you can expect to hear about. Go Pack Go. Roll Tide. Braun is the GOAT. Aaron Rodgers is the best passer of football that's ever existed. My state flag is better than yours. Old Bay or J.O.'s over everything. Flats are better than drums. Ranch is superior, but blue cheese I fuck with too. And the only part of the pig that I'm not eating are the booty noodles. If you don't know what booty noodles are, that's chitlins. I'm not eating no chitlins. Also, wearing a size 11 and a half, 12 as a sneakerhead is a curse. That shoe size always sells out. It's never available unless I'm sitting there in front of the app right when they drop. A couple other things: Final Fantasy, Fallout, Battletoads, Star Fox, GoldenEye, Ghost Recon, The Walking Dead, The Good Place, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Living Color, Mad TV, Boondocks, Chappelle Show, Rock, Martin, The Jamie Foxx Show, and Ghost Adventures. Top tier television. Elite video games. Music. Let's talk about it. Wale, Lupe, Hove, T-Pain, John Legend, Ye before he lost his mind. Jamie Foxx is on Mount Rushmore of entertainers. Soul, funk, 90s R&B, and pretty much whatever Pharrell puts his hands on. So look, that's enough about me and my likes and my interests. That way, if I ever come on here and start talking about some other football team or some other video game or some other artist, you can call me out on it because you know where I stand. I'm an outspoken individual, but I try not to speak from a place of ignorance. If I'm speaking out about something, you can take a loan against the fact that I've read multiple sources to try to form my opinion, and I've looked at conflicting sources of information, tried to denoise it, and come up with what I believe to be my opinion. Now, as a scientist and someone that has experience doing experiments, my initial thoughts, my hypotheses, my ideas on subjects are always subject to change when I get new information. I have some non-negotiables for sure, but if you can present me with better information than what I had to make my initial decision, I'm always open-minded to change my mind. I love being challenged. I love learning. And I spend so much time reading and consuming information so I can feel comfortable walking into any room and be able to at least use context clues to keep up with any conversation. That's enough about me. Among a bunch of other things in this episode, we're going to tackle some big picture social concepts like the Overton window. We're going to talk about some basic physics. I'm looking at you, 30-odd 6 round. My fantasy football team. And how oysters may hold a secret that can revolutionize bone injury treatment. If I may speak for a few, let's dive into episode 1. We live, baby! What the fuck was that meeting about? Trump and Hegseth doing a publicly televised loyalty test? If you follow me on Instagram, I talked a while ago about Nacht der Langen Messer, the Night of the Long Knives, where the Nazi Party basically chopped off the head of the military for a fear of a coup for individuals that weren't on board with what they were doing. I believe that the Trump regime is in the process of doing something very similar. Maybe not necessarily with the same violence, but even in the interview today and in the meeting, Trump mentioned that if he would speak with all these generals and admirals, and if he didn't like them or if he didn't like what they thought about his plans, that he would fire them on the spot. So you might not necessarily need to assassinate them, but if you fail the loyalty test, if you fail the purity test, he would have no problem with removing you from power. Then you have them threatening military force on Dem-led cities. That shit is terrifying, especially because I don't have faith that military leaders would say no, or the ones that would say no would actually be around in a position to say no when Trump asked them to do something unconstitutional or illegal. Oh, I forgot to mention in my little bio rants about me and things that I like and interested in, I got a couple other things I meant to say. You can sue me. I'm rooting for everybody that's black. That's just how it is. I'm pro-black. Fuck Donald Trump. Today, tomorrow, forevermore. Free Palestine. Non-negotiable. Genocide is not okay. There's no world where you can justify what's going on in Gaza. Free those people. Let people live their lives. Transgender folks that are queer, folks that are whatever. It doesn't matter what they are, how they choose to live their life. Let people live. Let them live. How we can be the land of liberty and justice for all when we're actively trying to restrict liberty and not deliver equal justice for all? I truly believe in those words, which is why I want people to be able to live. Now, of course, there are some non-negotiables there. I don't care what you think about children. Being a minor attracted person or anything like that is a non-negotiable. I am not tolerating that. That is illegal. It is immoral. It is unethical. It is dangerous. So I will not make any apologies for people that are anti that. I can't get down with that. But outside of stuff like that, let people live. Let them live. I'm pro-choice, pro-woman, pro-science, and did I mention fuck Donald John Trump? All right, now that I got that out the way, let's get back on track. So a couple of the things I wanted to talk about tonight. I wanted to talk about something called the Overton window. The Overton window is essentially the range of ideas for public policy or social issues that are acceptable by the public at any given time. A lot of words. Basically, it means what society at any point in time determines what is acceptable in that society. For instance, if we look back in the 1600s, the easy example, the obvious example, for the most part, slavery was a publicly acceptable social and policy issue. Someone that was an abolitionist or someone that was anti-slavery would have been viewed as someone that's on the fringes of acceptable behavior. More modern example, look at the 1960s, for instance, the free love movement, the hippie movement. People that were enjoying those kind of music festivals and getting into that drug culture and those things were considered fringe prior to that. And there was resistance against accepting that lifestyle and those things into the mainstream. But very quickly, that became an acceptable thing, an acceptable social norm. When you're talking about politics, though, you look at America, and you look at America as a democracy with two parties, liberals and conservatives. But our Overton window has shifted so much that what we call liberal is really centrist. and what we call conservative has moved to the far right. So our window of what's politically, socially acceptable has moved center right, away from dead center. So things that U.S. liberals consider liberal are really conservative values in other countries, and things that are considered far left in America are generally just left of center in other countries that are economic peers. Easy examples again would be like universal health care and education. In the US, you ask for those things, you're a far left liberal, how are we going to pay for it, etc. But in other countries, they're like, what, you don't have this? You don't have universal health care? College costs how much? Oh, you needed that surgery. You had cancer? How'd they take care of you? It costs how much for that? And that's an example of our Overton window being shifted so much that our liberal ideas are really just centrist ideas. They are fiscally conservative light. And our to the right ideas are moved so far right that we are publicly talking about eugenics and suppressing free speech and revoking people's citizenship, murdering people extrajudicially in a war on drugs that there's been no congressional act or no guidance on from Congress, but our president has authorized the military to drone strike boats off the coast of Venezuela. And so far, we've killed 17 people and destroyed 3 boats with no evidence that those people were drug runners, criminals in any way. So the Overton window basically explains what your society will consider acceptable to the mainstream population. And our Overton window is shifted so far right that when people ask for actual liberal ideas, they are met with such resistance. And instead of the Liberal Party, the Democrats in America being more centrist, trying to pull in folks that are on the fringes of both groups, we really should be looking to shift our window back to the center. So liberal ideas can actually be liberal. Conservative ideas can be conservative without being extremist. That's a thing that we have to work on, and it's something that's going to take a long time for us to do. I truly hope that before this democratic experiment ends, before America is no longer the America we have grown to love, tolerate, accept, I pray that we can shift that window closer to the center. And with folks like Zoran Mandami and others, AOC and others actually asking for liberal ideas, actually trumpeting ideas that would benefit everyone, I hope that they catch fire and people realize that governance for the people and not for special interests, the ultra wealthy corporations, is how government should work. The idea of being taxed more, but knowing that education is taken care of, universal health care is taken care of, our infrastructure is taken care of, clean energy is being promoted, clean air, clean water, all the things that are being reduced, restricted, or removed by this far right regime benefit everyone. And I have no problem paying higher taxes in order for those things to be where my tax dollars go to. Instead, our tax dollars are going to fund the tax cuts for those same corporations that are being freed up to perform and behave in any manner that they would like, regardless of the outcomes for the health of the U.S. citizens, the cleanliness of our water, the cleanliness of our air. And I'm not comfortable with that. I can't stand that idea, and I don't know how we got that far. But enough about the Overton window. Let's talk about something that's even more ridiculous. Apparently, reports came out that Charlie Kirk, his bone structure, his amazing bone structure, stopped a 30-06 round from going into his body and leaving out and damaging or hurting anyone else around after he was fired upon. I just want to talk a little bit about what that means and how ridiculous that is and how crazy they must think we are to believe that. In general, a 30-06 round is capable of moving at 2,800 feet per second. All right? And at the distance that they claim the shot was from, which was roughly 200 yards, we're talking about roughly 1,800 to 2,000 foot-pounds of energy of that round hitting his body. Now, that's a weird number. That's something that is hard for you to comprehend, because with 2,000 foot-pounds of energy, what does that actually mean? What does that sound like? What does that actually equate to? Think about this. 1 foot-pound is the amount of energy a 1-pound weight expresses when it hits the ground. All right? How much energy a 1-pound weight expresses when it hits the ground. Now think about that. I said the round roughly had 2,000 foot-pounds of energy. So it would express 2,000 pounds of energy hitting the ground. That would mean a 2,000-pound moose would get moved by a round. Does that make sense? All that energy from that round was stopped by the mighty bones of Charlie Kirk. The same force that would take a 2,000-pound moose and move it was somehow stopped by the vibranium or adamantium bones of Charlie Kirk. Now, look, I'm down for some fringe theories. I'm down for some interesting conspiracy talk. Let's talk about aliens and let's do all that. But you're not about to tell me that physics just no longer applies. That this human being in the soft spot of the neck had the strongest bones ever to be discovered in history. And that comes directly from the coroner. Explain to me that, folks. I get it. We want to find reasons. We want to explain things. They're taking this whole CK thing and doing the best they can to milk this. There's a lot of questions about what actually happened, but don't lie to us, okay? Don't tell us that this dude had the strongest bones ever and that this round that exerts that much force was just stopped by this dude's impervious bones. All right, that's just ridiculous. I'm not even going to go on that anymore. I'm done with that. Let's move on to something else, y'all. Let's talk about some more science. That's actually pretty cool. Scientists in China have a bone glue. Yeah, bone glue. It is a oyster-inspired bone glue. Basically, they want to eliminate using metals in surgeries. And they have done the research and come up with a compound that can repair broken bones quickly without the need for any metal, screws, or big surgeries. You can inject this glue directly into a fracture site and speed up bone repair, and it will bond bone fragments together in 2 to 3 minutes. Even in areas where there's blood. So say if you have a compound fracture and the bone sticks out from the skin, they can set the bone back in place and apply this bone glue, and within 2 to 3 minutes, it would actually start fusing those bones together. And it was inspired by how oysters are able to stick to underwater surfaces no matter how slick they are. So oysters grow in places that are very moist, very difficult for normal adhesives to work. But they were able to mimic how oysters attach in very moist environments to create this bone glue, which gives it the ability to bind together fractured bones. So oysters themselves have a special protein adhesive that they express that allows them to stick to rocks, bridges, and other environments that are pretty harsh. But this substance works in wet, it could be salty, it could be constantly moving, and it forms a very strong bond as both pressure and erosion proof. They studied this adhesive and they mimicked the mechanism by creating this new glue. This new glue was found to have a bonding strength of over 400 pounds. That means it can take 180 kilos roughly and bind it to something else and not separate. It's anti-shear, which means that it'll prevent the bone fragments from sliding apart. And it has a really, really high compressive strength, which means that this glue is even resistant to crushing. One other advantage, they made the glue so that it is biodegradable. So while the body heals around the glue slowly degrades and is replaced by the new bone. So no further surgeries will be needed. And so far, the tests that they've done, the studies that they've done have shown how effective and safe this glue is. And it's reduced infection rates in surgery because they don't have to go in with metal tools or do any other cutting or any other bonding. And there's no additional surgeries, so it further reduces the infection risk. It's a super amazing science. It's really cool science. The glue would ultimately be cheaper and easier than using any of the current tools that we have for surgery. You could even do something arthroscopic or a very small incision and inject this glue directly into that bone instead of doing a larger scale surgery where you have to cut into the person even more than that. This is really good news. This is extremely good news. And so far, they've moved to clinical trials. And it's entirely possible that if they continue to develop this, they could work on complex fractures. Like if you shattered a bone in an accident, instead of getting screws and plates and all that stuff placed into your body, they could align the bones and inject this bioglue and allow your body to fuse that bone naturally, and the glue itself would eventually degrade and be pushed out of the body as waste. Now that's the kind of science we should be trying to do And that's the kind of science that makes me excited about being a scientist. Looking at nature and finding ways that we can help people is something that we could always benefit from. And the purpose of science isn't necessarily for the outcome. Discovery and exploration for the sake of discovery and exploration is more than enough to justify science expenses, because you have no idea how many things that we use on a day-to-day basis came about just from pure curiosity, an observation of something in nature or a question about something in nature leading to a new drug, a new technology, a new discovery. And that's why I love science. On a side note, my fantasy team could probably use some of that damn glue. I have Joe Burrow, Tyreek Hill, Terry McLaurin, and Evan Ingram. All four of them dudes are injured right now with bone injuries. Back injury for Evan Ingram, ab groin injury for Scary Terry, Tyreek Hill, leg exploded basically. Glad he's out of surgery and okay. Joe Burrow's foot exploded. So I have four guys that were relatively high picks for me completely gone. And I've been taking a beating as a result. I wasn't able to join my league's draft this year. And it's a league that I've been in for a long time because they changed the date to do some special event at the stadium while I was out of town with the missus watching Chris Brown. Chris Brown performance was dope. The man performed for almost 3 hours basically. High energy, amazing set. Very great crowd energy. If you got the chance to go see Breezy, go see that man. But I think they did me wrong for this fantasy draft. I've been in this league for over a decade and I'm always competitive. I've won twice and I'm nearly always in the playoffs, but I think the fix was it for your boy this year. I think they was trying to get me out the paint, trying to send me down to our B league, trying to get me out of there. So look, y'all, there's so much more to discuss. There's no way we can get to everything everywhere all the time. But tune in next week for episode 2. And make sure you like this, share it where you can, and subscribe. Special perks for my day ones. You'll have access to live streams and live chats. And for my I'm Listening crew, you'll be able to request topics, news for me to break down and discuss. Those inboxes and stuff will be only for my paid subscribers. You can help guide and frame what If I May Speak looks like. If you have breaking news that you'd like me to get into, I will do live chats and live streams in response to some of the breaking issues that we're running into. If there's cool science that comes up, I can break it down for you. This is my space to talk. This is my space to share. Thanks for lending me your ear, and thanks for listening to If I May Speak. Peace.